You are now in the backcourt for episode 7, a Brooklyn Nets podcast presented by Ticketmaster and brought to you by me, Lucas Kaplan, writer for NetsDaily, maker, of Nets film focus videos, and my co-host Sarah Kustok, the color commentator for Yes Network. Who knows more about the Nets than her? And it is, again, week 7. The Nets are back in Brooklyn after a hectic schedule. Sarah, how are we doing?
We're doing good. We're doing good. It has been a whirlwind here, Lucas, but we're ready to rock and obviously dig into some of the things we saw this last week.
And this last week, that includes a thrilling end to their West Coast swing, a victory over the full strength, just about Phoenix Suns. Forever, it will be known as the Tyrese Martin game. Nearly doubled his career point total with a 30-piece. Then they come back home to Brooklyn, lose both games of a mini-series against the Orlando Magic. And just last night, we're recording Tuesday, on Monday night, went to Chicago, another back-to-back, and lost that one. It, as Sarah said, as I mentioned, really the takeaway, at least one of them is, boy, this NBA schedule is tough, and you don't want to use it as an excuse, but just watching the game, it felt like the long travel, the so many games played in a row, the injuries, it kind of all caught up to the Nets last night. And there is a lot of basketball to talk about. But as for the results, it felt like that was one of, if not the driving force, at least in my opinion.
I thought you could see it. And I know Jordi Fernández and the players, will use that as an excuse after speaking post-game. But Lucas, there was that feel. This has been a compacted schedule. It's been a challenging one. I know now that we head into this next week and in the following with the cup games that will be scheduled. There will be some breathing room, some days in between, but add in the fact that the amount of bodies you're missing and the style of play that Jordi Fernández and their group want to play, it was a challenge. And I think you saw that kind of manifest itself as the Bulls game continued on throughout the course of that second half.
Definitely. And not only are the Nets playing the schedule, and every team has these stretches, and that's, a key reason you can't use it as an excuse. They're also doing it with about half the rotation, half the roster missing. Now, there has been some good news. There's Day'Ron Sharpe's return, which I'm sure we will get into. But since the last time we spoke, Cam Thomas has been ruled out for a couple of weeks with a hamstring strain. Cam Johnson rolled an ankle twice since we last spoke, and he is day-to-day. He's only missed one game, so hopefully that's good. Ben Simmons missed last night's game. Nick Claxton has kind of been in and out of the lineup. Dorian Finney-Smith has been out with an ankle injury. You go on and on. Noah Clowney rolled an ankle. And a key theme there is that that's just about every big man the Nets have, including Day'Ron Sharpe, who just made his season return. So not only are they tired, but they're also small, at least compared to some other teams, especially the Magic. And it just felt like a compounding of almost physically exhaustive things. But we will get into some basketball. But first, just how did you see that kind of manifest? I guess the combination of being small and maybe at the end of their rope in terms of energy.
Yeah, I think you saw it, and you said it especially against Orlando. And we can go through each of it, but I think you saw it in the matchups of what they were trying to do to create an advantage for themselves. And at some point, just ran out a little bit of those type of optionality with the lineup, with the rotation. And I still, again, we can get into each specific matchup. I still give them a ton of credit because I think you saw players, which I know we will discuss, get an opportunity, get some run, like a Dariq Whitehead. You've already mentioned Tyrese Martin. Spots with Shake Milton. The list will go on of those who haven't had a lot of time, and when given the opportunity, they performed well. I thought you still saw the same intent of style of play that they want to play at. It just can be challenging when, you're missing half your roster. It was the 8th straight game, that Chicago game, not only the 8th straight game of a different starting lineup, but the 6th unique starting lineup. So these are also players that had not spent a ton of time on the floor together. So for all those reasons, again, I think you really need to break down the ways in which you're evaluating it aside from just the stats or the wins and losses.
Definitely. And instilling a new culture, a rookie head coach, we kind of knew that's what this season was going to be about. Sean Marks, again, to go back to his introductory season opening press conference, talked about finding the next Nets, who's going to be here long term. And that obviously, the new head coach, Jordi Fernández, has some input in that. And so, we're really looking at the big picture. Great time to start a podcast, cover this team's multi-year growth, which I'm excited about. And as you mentioned, you see the way they are playing did not really drop off, even though the energy, the legs, the size, whatever you want to call it. And again, we talked about Jordi Fernández a lot last episode, but his competitiveness still stands out to me, and it feels like that trickles down throughout the roster. Starting again with that Phoenix game, just the camaraderie, the bridge, kind of a short-form documentary series put out by Brooklyn's content team. You just saw them go crazy for Tyrese Martin's game and the competitiveness he and the other deep bench guys brought to the floor. You see Jordi Fernández calling timeouts to challenge plays down 25 with a couple minutes left. You see the competitive fire come out of him in some of those Orlando games. And there's even stuff like, there's a play a couple weeks ago, I forget which game, but the Nets have 55 seconds left in the third quarter, and they have the ball, and they bleed the clock out so as to not let the other team get a 2-for-1. And it's just the attention to detail, the competitiveness that really sticks out for this team. And it's why, in my opinion, this team has been fun to watch, fun to cover, even when they're winning and they're doing great things like on the West Coast trip, or if they lose 3 in a row like they just have.
Yeah, and I think there's different reasons for some of these losses or some of the shortcomings throughout stretches in each quarter that you can attribute reasons to that are beyond just a lack of effort or a lack of intent. And so when you look at the Magic, the two different Magic matchups were different, and it's still the same personnel. And you had mentioned this earlier. The Magic are a team predicated on their defense. They have got size, they have length, they are physical, they try and get in you and get under your skin. And I thought the Nets really matched that in a good way. And they maybe didn't have the same type of personnel to do so, but they did not back down one bit. That first matchup, you're missing Dennis Schroeder, you're missing your point guard. So what was a huge issue? Those points off turnovers and just the lack of true organization, which that makes sense, though they shot the lights out. And the Magic had a rare game of which they could miss from 3 as well. You flip the page to the next matchup, and it was just a rock fight in both teams, trying to get off shots, trying to get off quality shots. The style of play that Brooklyn wants to play and putting up a lot of 3-point shots, that's exactly what the Magic take away. And again, this is a team that had a 7-game series against Cleveland last year, 40-plus win season, core and a continuity that has been together now in their 4th year under Jamal Mosley. So there's a lot of reasons that you still look at that and you could see those flashes. Okay, we're going to pull these things. And then Chicago, again, that one was the one that wasn't the prettiest and got away in some capacity, but the Nets were missing a lot. When you looked at the injury list of players they were missing, impactful players, and then the size of those players and how that looked against a Bulls team that can come at you with some size across the board and some talented former All-Stars. There's ways, again, that you understand why there may have been some shortcomings.
Yes, talented former All-Stars. Nikola Vucevic has been a Nets killer as long as I can remember. It's almost scripted at this point, and you got to spot the Bulls like 10 points because he's on the roster.
And he's having a killer season. Like,
that's
like you look at it, like Vucevic is having a tremendous season. Zach LaVine is having a tremendous season. You kind of go down the list of some of their players, some of the younger players, and it's the same concept of they were a hungry team as well. And some nights just are not your night.
Some nights are not your night. And that includes the first Orlando game where the lowest 3-point shooting percentage team in the league just went crazy. I mean, some of the shots, not that they are not pros, but some of the shots KCP was making, Franz off the dribble, it was tough to keep up with. However, focusing a little bit more in on the Magic, because I think that was probably the most interesting, couple of games of this past week. The second game, right, they come out, and Franz Wagner, who really was dominant in the first game, they switch a ton in the second half. Nick Claxton's on him. They do a pretty good job rebounding behind him in most cases. Franz goes 4 of 17. They cut off shots at the rim. They just can't really get the offense to flow. And I've spoken about it before, but the one thing the Nets really struggle with offensively is when another team can create ball pressure and be physical at the point of attack and push their offense out towards half court. That really slows the Nets, dribble handoff game down, kind of that east to west, side to side action. And in that way, I think Orlando's a really good foil for Brooklyn because they have a lot of similar characteristics, right? But Orlando is A, huge, which the Nets are not, and B, been doing this for a minute. Jamal Mosley's in his 4th year as head coach. They've been to the playoffs. They've gotten some experience. And, Jordi talks about we don't learn lessons from other teams, right? We learn lessons from ourselves. But in watching the Magic, as outsiders, are there any, I don't want to say lessons, but do they reveal something about the Nets? They played them 3 times now. All the games have kind of been similar, and they've been a team that the Nets, I don't want to say can't really figure out, but they've given the Nets a lot of problems this season.
I think they're just a really tough matchup. One, and they're a tough matchup for a lot of teams. I'll go back to when you watch, and especially too, I know people see this, and everyone fans understand it in watching on television. But when you're sitting there live, the amount of length, quickness, and just the way in which they can swallow you up and shrink the floor, as you pointed out, putting Jalen Suggs at the point of attack. But whether it's Franz Wagner, obviously they're playing without Paolo Banchero, but a player like KCP, individually, they have very, very good defenders. Collectively, they had an excellent plan, and again, a continuity of how they want to play. Wendell Carter Jr. coming back, what he adds to the table, even Batadze, like everyone has had added responsibilities with Banchero going out, and I think they really flourished with that. And I also think they're just a team that's like they got a, whether it's a chip on their shoulder, however you want to frame it. But to your point about similarities, like I watch them, and they are a team that I've known Jamal Mosley, huge fan of his. Think he's a excellent coach, wonderful human and individual, and how he resonates with players. I had mentioned under his 4th year. To me, he's someone, and not even the same dispositions, but just in the concept of what we're seeing out of Jordi initially, the culture shift. I remember I was doing some other work down and went to the Magic there for, I think it was either Mosley's 1st year, 2nd year, whatever it was. And everyone was like, he shifted the culture immediately. We knew exactly what was being asked of us. We knew where to be, what to do, just how he was able to communicate with us. And to me, watching that and then watching those core players, how Orlando drafted, you pick up some key free agents, but otherwise it's a lot of pieces that they develop together. That's stuff that I see in this Nets team. That's some of the stuff you think 2, 3, 4 years down the line, how they want to play. But I think they're just and to the point of that on the defensive end, match it with they want to take away threes, regardless of what team. And so what do the Nets want to do? The things that the Nets really base themselves on, that's what Orlando is good at. And you kind of, I think, saw that come to fruition in both games, on top of Brooklyn missing some key players.
It was one of the first times consistently that I felt like Brooklyn could not do what they wanted to do. Now they've lost games, every team loses games, but the 2 Orlando games, their 2 lowest 3-point attempt totals. So the fewest threes taken of the season this weekend. And now the first game, they turned the ball over a ton without Dennis. Jordi, that was the first thing he brought up in his post game. The second game, it really did just feel like they didn't turn it over as much, but physicality doesn't just happen in the paint. It happens on the perimeter. They push you outside. Every handoff is hard. And when the Nets are rolling, they do the same thing to you on defense. But it felt like they got a taste of their own medicine, especially in that second game.
And real quick with that, in the second game, to your point, didn't turn the ball over as much, 17 turnovers, but the Magic were able to get 33 points off of those. So you could see that type of understanding of how to capitalize. So I think it's just tough. And again, give credit to the Magic and their team as a whole, because I think there's someone that all of us are going to be keeping an eye out for, especially when Banchero comes back, what they look like towards their attempt of being towards the top of the Eastern Conference.
Definitely. And what the Magic did to the Nets was not easy, because we saw it in Phoenix, which has happened since last time we talked. if you don't bring that physicality, if you're not rock solid at the point of attack against the Nets, they're going to get up 43s and they're going to make a lot of them. And that is why the Nets have been in almost every game. That's why they're going to keep being in a lot of games, because it takes a special defense. It takes a special game plan to prevent the Nets from doing what they do. And the fact that we're at game 20, we're at about the quarter point of the season, and that was really the first extended stretch of time I felt like the Nets could not execute their principles. That's a very good sign. And, I don't want to give the impression this week was all full of negatives, because it really was not. And we're going to get to the positives. But one quick question I want to ask you before we move on. The Nets are small. It is what it is. Nick Claxton has, for a while, been the only big available. And even he's, gone through troubles with his back, missed a few games here and there, minutes restriction, what have you. Dorian's been out. Ben has missed a couple games. All of these big guys. So that is just kind of a fact of who they are. However, statistically, their defense suffers in the following areas. They foul. They send the other team to the free throw line a lot. They have not been the best defensive rebounding team. And they allow quite a bit of shots at the rim. So if looking at these next few games, they're getting Day'Ron back, they're going to have a break. They're going to get some guys back for sure. Which of those areas do you think is the most improvable, is the most fixable, something you're looking at?
I think they all go hand in hand.
Okay.
Because oftentimes I think you're fouling because you're a little out of position. You might be late getting to a spot. I think part of it too is the push and the emphasis on being physical, and they played very physical teams. And so I think when it comes to that, there's a balance. And as the season progresses, you figure that out. I think some of the issues with the rim protection, the rebounding, some of that too is getting used to how they're pressuring out in the backcourt, trying to extend defenses, trapping, blitzing, showing different looks. And what does that do? It can make you vulnerable on the backside, because you are, I don't want to use the word gamble, because that's not a part of their defensive philosophy, but you're overextending yourself to try and disrupt. And sometimes those rotations on the back, whether they're a little late or whether, you're in a spot that you're off, I think all of those things go hand in hand. And add in the fact, again, this is a part of the NBA. Every team deals with it. They've been missing a lot of front court players. They've been missing a lot of bigs. You look at the Chicago game, and you're without Ben Simmons, and Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson, also Zaire Williams. Like this is even if it's not your Day'Ron Sharpe, Nick Claxton's, it's still guys with length. And so if you're switching or if you're rotating off, then you're looking at a Dennis Schroeder who's trying to defend in the post, or you're looking at another smaller size that everyone fights. Everyone's doing a great job. But I think when you look at those numbers, that adds to it. The same with the defensive rebounding. Sometimes when you're rotating, shuffling off, you get caught a little bit, or you don't have those same type of bigs. And we've seen that they could do it. We've seen, nothing has changed in the fact that they can do it. I just think some of those factors will be mitigated for some of those reasons.
Definitely. And you don't want to say the philosophy isn't working, because the one thing they are well above league average in is forcing turnovers. And they need to do a little bit of a better job in getting out and running and converting opportunities when they force those turnovers. But you can't just look at the raw rebounding numbers with this team all the time, because they frequently won the turnover battle. And so those are shots that the other team is not getting up, and you don't have chances to rebound.
Yeah.
They are actually around league average at forcing misses at the rim. So it's not all bad in terms of their interior defense. When they are in position, doing a good job going vertically. I think we've seen that a lot. They want to say the key play of the Golden State win was Tyrese Martin getting back in transition. You got like a 2-guard getting up, forcing a miss.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not all bad. They're certainly not soft, anything like that.
Yeah.
And that's a big win for them. And keeping the positives train rolling, we'll move on to Brooklyn's finest. Who do you just really want to give a big shout out to from this last week of play?
I think I do want to go with Dariq Whitehead. I know it's recent, and I know it would, but he's someone who obviously has been through a lot since dealing with injuries and coming back, getting himself settled, opportunities that he has taken with the Long Island Nets and now here. And he had a chance to have a good run. And he just lit it up in a way that the Nets really, really needed. And he's a player, I think, too. Like, I will say this just in watching him, being around him being around the team. He is sunshine. Like,
Yeah.
he is smiley. He brings a great energy, a vibe. Like, you need those chemistry type players that really just lift the team, lift the locker room, lift the vibe. And he always does that. He consistently does that. And sometimes that's not as easy to do when you're not getting a bunch of time. You feel like when you do get moments, you're not performing the way you believe you can. And whether that's, you know, the in the practice, be ready group or whatnot, or in the games. And I was just so proud and like excited to see him showcase some of those skills that you know are there. So he to me was someone that the Nets needed that. Those moments matter. So often we talk about minutes at the end of the game or a game being a little lopsided. It's still what a player shows a coaching staff or shows an organization in those stretches is important. And I was just really excited to see that for him.
Definitely. You know, you talk about being excited for your teammates and being a good teammate, but it is a two-way street. You have to be a guy that your teammates will get excited for, you know, when it's not your turn to shine. And Dariq, anyone you talk to, I mean, you obviously have a special knowledge. You're around the group a lot. But reporters, fans, I mean, media staffers, you will not find anybody that does not have a kind word to say, but essentially exactly what Sarah just said about Dariq. You know, foot surgery before his freshman year at Duke, his only year at Duke, foot surgery after the season, surgery to correct shin splints at the end of last year, and through it all, the guy has never lost his smile, his joy, his willingness, his openness in talking about it. And that's why I think you saw the reaction from his teammates last night in Chicago. He made 6 threes, youngest player in Nets history to do that. It was really only the second game of his NBA career that he got non-end-of-game garbage time minutes. And the guy had 18 points. Not only that, 2 steals, a block on a corner 3, an impressive, you know, rotation at the rim, went vertical. That got the Nets bench fired up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he was really all over the place. And, you know, he had a couple great quotes after the game. And by the way, Sarah, was not just that performance why you gave him Brooklyn's finest. It was also his career high 26-point performance in the G League in the last game he played
in. Yes.
That I know
Good
you
work.
were thinking about.
Good work.
And he said, you know, quoting him, it was a huge part, me scoring that 26 or whatever it was in the G League. It just helped bring back the confidence that I've been missing for 2 years, dealing with the injuries and stuff, just not believing in myself. Obviously, knowing the talent and stuff was there, but not doing much for the past 2 years. So I feel like that was just a huge step for me. And that's about as honest, as earnest as you'll hear, you know, a guy talk about his own career. And man, you really hope he can keep this train rolling. And with the Nets' history of developing guys in the G League, even if Dariq continues to get run down there, it hopefully we look at that Chicago game as, you know, a turning point, as a linchpin in his, you know, story of success. And I think there's a good chance of it. I mean, man, he can shoot that thing.
Absolutely.
I want to give a shout out to Dennis Schroeder. I know he missed a game in the past week, but just the guy, we were in Golden State and he was questionable. And, you know, some of the reporters were talking, I don't know if, you know, Dennis, they might not play him. I said, no, he's going to play. He sees Steph out there. He sees KD. This is extremely complimentary. He sees these guys, and it gets him going even more than he already is. And he closed out the Suns, and he's laughing at KD on switches. They're joking. He's frying people. He's bringing the energy. And, you know, Orlando, the games come. He's really, with Cam Thomas out, the only true initiator on the team. He's 6'1". Orlando's huge. Struggles a bit. Chicago the other day, 16 points, 10 assists. The guy has a ton on his plate right now. And maybe not every possession looks perfect. But, you know, where would this Nets offense right now, per cleaning the glass, above average offense, with all the injuries, it's hard to imagine them being anything close to that without Dennis this season. And this week, I thought was just a perfect example of it.
Yes, without a doubt. I think we saw some of that when he was absent from that Orlando game, as we had discussed.
Yeah, the way he can just get to the rim, and his little scoop shots where he doesn't put his left hand on the ball, it's been seared into my brain now. The way he can slither through spaces, and with that, I will move. He's always a next net that we're watching. I'm always so excited to see him play, especially if there's another star on the court for him to go up against and test his talent. The next net for you, who do you really want to keep an eye on over this next week? Who's caught your attention?
I mean, I talked about Tyrese Martin last week, and now it feels like I'm just turning to who I most recently picked as Brooklyn's finest. But I'm really excited, and maybe it may be more in the G League with the Long Island Nets. I'm excited to keep watching Dariq Whitehead. I think he's someone that, I assume we may get to Day'Ron Sharpe, obviously, having an opportunity to watch him now that he's back. But I'm curious to see what this particular game, because confidence is something that is so valuable but can be so fragile, how this may spark what it looks like for Whitehead when giving an opportunity with the Brooklyn Nets, but also how he continues to help that flourish him in the G League.
Yeah, he talked about early this season. He said the offense is going to come. It's a matter of me getting healthy, getting my feet under me. The defense is what I really have to learn in terms of X's and O's and wrap my brain around. And as mentioned it, first play of the game, gets a steal with some ball pressure, rotates, blocks a corner three, forces a stop at the rim. So if he's, putting that all together, the guy's just turned 20. That is a great next net to watch. And I really do encourage my fellow Nets fans to tune into some Long Island games and watch his development, because we've talked about it already. Cam Thomas, Day'Ron Sharpe, Nick Claxton. These guys have come through Long Island and turned into bona fide NBA players, and there's no reason to think Dariq can't do the same. I mean, heck, Jalen Wilson and Noah Clowney from last year were awesome in the G League. The G matters. And so does the return of Day'Ron Sharpe, not just because, we know what he brings. Energy, defense, rebounding. He's improved so much over his first 3 years in the league, now in his fourth. But I want to read you some stats if I could. Not too heavy on the numbers. But Brooklyn is right now an above-average offense per cleaning their glass. They're 13th in offense. They are above average in effective field goal percentage, so they're making their shots. They're around league average in turnover percentage, and they get to the line a lot, 10th in the league in free throw rate. They are towards the bottom of the league in offensive rebounding. And boy, if there's one thing Day'Ron Sharpe can do, it's get on the glass. So his return and his fit into this team just seems just like a hand in glove fit, does it not?
Yeah. In those things, also, I think he had a great offseason, a good preseason. Anyone that misses that much time, I think you need some run to get your legs under you, but I'm excited to see. And I also think hopefully then getting some other players back, the compilation of this entire roster, what it looks like and how he can play alongside some of those players will be fun to see.
Certainly. And the thing that popped last year is, he just came in on a different level athletically in terms of catching lobs above the rim. It was his best season in terms of 2-point percentage, in terms of field goal percentage, positioning on defense, just kind of short space, explosiveness. So he had a great block on Nikola Vucevic last night where he hedged, out by where you guys are sitting at the scores table, recovered back to Vuce driving the lane, blocked a layup, and it's like, I don't know if Day'Ron does that his first couple years in the league, but like the guy's a worker.
And you said it, the ability to trap, to blitz on us, to recover his movements. It's not just about the rebounding, but what he can do in the scheme of the defense. I think he's going to be a value add to all of them.
Definitely. There were a couple just awesome, just classic Day'Ron moments where it's his first game back. He's getting his legs under him and some offensive rebounds just are off his fingertips. But it's like in a week, those are putbacks. Those are twos. And speaking of Day'Ron Sharpe, I set that up well. It's time for trivia.
Yeah.
Do you want to know a fun fact about Day'Ron Sharpe?
I would love to.
He is the franchise leader going back to New Jersey.
Okay.
In offensive rebounding.
Okay.
Percentage per 36 minutes, per 100, you name it, right?
Okay.
Okay. The Nets on their roster have two other all-time franchise leaders. It'd be pretty hard to do all of it. So I will say one of them leads the franchise in all-time field goal percentage, and one of them leads the franchise in all-time turnover percentage. Lowest turnover avoidance, of course. Who are those two Nets?
The current roster, you mean?
Yes, active players.
So I would say field goal percentage would be Nick Claxton.
Slam dunk. He is a career 66% shooter. That is about 4.5, 5 points above Jared Allen. He's got that one in the bag for now.
Lowest turnover percentage.
All time.
Would it all time?
And yeah, this is all-time franchise leaders.
I mean, a part of me wants to say Schroeder. Dennis Schroeder?
No.
Is it someone who handles the ball a lot? Like, do we feel like the sample size is large enough?
The sample size is large enough. According to Basketball Reference, this is all minimum requirements met. No Mickey Mouse leaders here. This is all above board.
I get that. Cam Johnson?
Ding, ding, ding. That is correct. I mean, we've talked about his turnover avoidance on the pod before. The guy turns it over 7.2% of possessions. That's the all-time leader, just ahead of one of 9-year-old, 10-year-old Lucas Kaplan's all-time favorites, Anthony Morrow.
Okay.
That boy could shoot the rock. I will tell you all that.
I like this.
This is a historic Nets roster.
We're a good trivia day with this historic Nets roster.
I know. I thought that was really good. And we touched on Day'Ron last. I mean, we're just like the Nets. We're finding our stride. This has been episode 7 of the Backcourt. Sarah, is there any parting words you would like to say? We actually don't really know the schedule for this upcoming week.
No, we don't.
Which is the only time we can say that.
No, we'll get set for Indiana and Milwaukee, and then after that, just keep riding. But we're going to have a little bit of breathing room in between games. So
we will.
That won't be a bad thing for all of us.
We'll catch up on some things. It's the first time. It's only time for the next 7 months. My schedule has some spontaneity, some uncertainty in it. I don't mind that. You can find the Backcourt wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can rate us, like, subscribe, say nice things about us on social media. All of it is appreciated. This has been episode 7 of the Backcourt, a Brooklyn Nets podcast presented by Ticketmaster. Thank you all for listening. We appreciate it so much.